Today we got to start working on our 69 Mercedes project. First thing we're going to do with this car as far as taking care of the rust repair issues that are needed to be done on it. We're going to drop the fuel tank out of the back, which I already started to do the other week. Drained all the fuel out of it. Clean out the trunk and start cutting out the trunk pan, which we have new panels that we bought for it. And then we're going to go ahead and get the rear valence panel replaced on it and start working our way forward on the car with lower quarter repairs. The left side needs a new inner and outer wheelhouse patches done in the front, as well as a frame rail section back here. And then we can get on to floor pans and the toe boards and a couple other pieces that we've got to do on this car to get the rust fixed and the rigidity back so that we can go ahead and get the rest of the bodywork finished. This is one of the areas that we knew had some rust in it, but now that I've got everything out of the trunk area and the mat up and the wiring harnesses out of the way, the rust is a little more extensive than what we thought. But the good thing is the new floor pans that we got will cover everything that's rotted. So, as you can see in this trunk, there is a lot of rust in areas where the wiring harness sat, because it's a trough just for the water to sit in. The only things we got to worry about is there's a few retainers here and here and here that hold the jack in place in the trunk so it's not flying around all over the place. And there is a mount that goes here for the spare tire, but that's bolted in, so that'll be easy to put back in. I'm going to start on this here in a minute, but I just wanted to talk briefly about the different ways that you can take these pans out. They're all spot welded in. And you can see here where I've scraped some of the paint away, where the little dots are, where the paint stays, that is where the spot welds are. So you've got all these little spot welds that have to be taken out, and there's several ways that you can do this. You can use a grinder, you can use a cutoff tool with a thick, I like to use a thick 1/4 inch grinding wheel on it, and just grind away at the welds. A lot of times you can pop the welds apart using a air chisel. There's a lot of different ways that you can go about doing it. A lot of guys like to use a plasma cutter. That's the next big tool on my get list. They're great for cutting out big sections, but you can't get too crazy with the plasma cutter as far as cutting out your spot welds, because the plasma cutter doesn't have any way to know which panel you want to cut out and which one you don't. It just cuts through everything. So if you got to leave an area where a panel is spot welded to, you really don't want to use a plasma cutter there, because you're just going to cut everything off, and then you've got a bigger problem on your hands. So we'll get started cutting this pan out, and we'll walk you through the process. Okay, so I went ahead and I cut out the whole center section using a panel ripper on my air hammer, and then I switched to a flat chisel for the same air hammer, and I just go along the seam carefully and pry up, and you usually can pop most of the spot welds apart pretty easy with that tool. And I've kind of gotten to where I like using that to do these panels where I can get at it with, because for one, it's not using up my cutoff wheels to grind away spot welds. It's a lot quicker than sitting there and grinding each and every spot weld apart, and it makes a little bit less of a mess. Little bit, not much. But yeah, so that's pretty much how removing one of these panels goes along. You just got to be careful about where you're trying to pop your spot welds apart. You don't want to damage the panels that it's got to attach, your new panel has to attach to. So you just got to watch real close about how much you're digging in and how far you're going when you're cutting things apart. And that's pretty much it. So I'm just going to continue on with this. I'm not going to film the whole panel removal. It's going to be pretty much the same thing as I go throughout the rest of the trunk and get this panel popped apart. But I'll come back once I've got it out, and these side pieces are separate. It's a 3-piece trunk panel. It's 2 sides and a center, and the ones that I bought for the car come exact like the originals. Okay, well, I've got most of the center pan cut out on this Mercedes, and I just wanted to catch up where I am and point out a couple things that I've run across while I've been taking this pan out. I mentioned earlier about using a plasma cutter and having to be careful about cutting too much. And sometimes when these vehicles are put together, you'll get a stack of sheet metal pieces in a structural area. And that's what we have at the back of this car here. Let's see if I can get in close. You've got the rear tail piece has an outer panel, and then it has an upper inner trunk panel, and then it has a lower piece. Now, because of the rust and the seam sealer that was back here, it was kind of hard to see just how these laid together. It almost looked like it was 3 panels stacked together, and then everything spot welded at the back. But so when I cut this out, I kind of used my panel ripper tool that goes on the air hammer, and I cut the majority of the pan out in the center. And then I figured I'd come back and clean up the edges where the new pan's got to lay down on the lip. So at this back lip, it looked like it was 3 pieces stacked in. The bottom piece here, and then the trunk pan came in, looked like it came in and went underneath of this upper tail piece. So I was going to just cut it along where the upper tail piece ended at, and then just trim my trunk pan and lay it on top of here. It wouldn't have hurt the structural rigidity of the car at all. It just would have made it easier to install it. Well, come to find out, that's actually how it was installed. As I said, it was kind of hard to see in along here the division of the pieces, but the trunk pan stopped right here. So as I was cutting along, I kind of cut my lip that the pan's got to sit on. Not a big deal. This can all be fixed. Have welder will fix. So you have to really try and be careful in deciphering just how these cars are put together. And as I'm finding out, when I pulled out my trunk side pieces to lay them in, and this is the right side panel here, I noticed that it doesn't come over to meet the center pan. So on closer inspection of the rails, it looks like these are actually, the frame rails in the back are solid, because this corner is rolled. It's not got a piece that's laid on top of it. So the frame rails are a solid piece, not solid, but it's a tubular piece. And then the center floor pan lays into about here. And then this edge, this right side pan comes into here. As I can just about see where the two pieces come together. Right along here is where this other pan comes in. So there's a lip over here that pan will sit onto. So these pans that I got actually are done really nice. Everything we got for this car came from Bud's Benz out of Georgia, and it's about the one place I could find a lot of older reproduction sheet metal for Mercedes. So like I said, this is the first Mercedes I've done, and I had to really search high and low to find really good stuff, and Bud's Benz seems to have just about everything I need to do this car. So that's where I'm at with this. I've just got a little bit more to finish here in the front. I've got to finish taking off this here and along the edges here and here, and then start cleaning up these rails where all the spot welds, little pieces are left behind, and on top of here. And then I'll probably cut my side pieces out, cut these sides out, and cut this side out. This side over here I'm going to have to make a patch piece for the top of this rail in through here, because it's really rusted pretty bad. And from looking at this is, like I said, it's a tubular frame rail. So we'll just have to make a piece for the center and get everything welded back nice and solid for here. Put our side panel in. I may make up some pieces back here where there's some rust back here, cut this to strip along here so I can clean all that up and lay a new piece along there too. Yeah, you know, you don't know what you're going to get into on rust repairs until you get into it, because rust doesn't sleep and it just likes to creep. Okay, so I've got the left side trunk extension piece, or left side pan piece, cut out, and it really wasn't too bad to get out. They had some stitch welds along the front, stitch welds here, spot welds along here, and surprisingly it wasn't attached to the quarter over here at all. Just had the gap filled in with some seam sealer, but it was such a tight fit that I actually thought that it was welded to the quarter. So I think when I put this new one in, that I'm going to go ahead and use some panel adhesive on that edge and get it attached to that quarter really good, instead of using just seam sealer to fill in the gap, because the gap should be pretty tight like the original one was. So now too, you can see the top of this frame rail needs a patch put in it, because what I found as I keep going along and learning these cars, these frame rails are not a tube, but it's actually a C-channel, whereas most American unibody cars are a U-channel, where the open part is at the top, and then your trunk pan or floor pan will close over top of the opening in the channel and get spot welded to flanges. These have a C channel or a reverse C channel, depending on which side you're working on, and then it's got another piece that spans the opening and makes it a solid rail. So this will have to have a patch put in it, and I'm going to need to make a patch for the flange here where the outer trunk piece attaches to, because it's got some rust in it there. But I also got looking at this outer wheelhouse. It's got some rust down here, a little bit in there, and the front part of it is where the major rust out in it is. And I've got the whole wheelhouse, and I'm kind of looking at it. It might not be that bad to change the whole thing. I just was going to do some patch, put a section in the front where it was rotted at, but the more I'm looking at this, I may go ahead and put the whole wheelhouse in. This way it'll take care of this section back here. I'll be able to clean up the quarter real nice, and we'll go around out here and you can see just what I'm talking about in here. Let's see that. This is a two-piece, so the outer piece comes down right through here, and it's going to take care of this half of this rust. And then I've got the inner wheelhouse too that I'll section in, and I'll do this section over here, which will take care of all this rust down here and this hole here. So that's where we're at so far, and we're just going to keep moving along. So here's all that remains from the trunk pans we cut out of the Mercedes. The centers, both left and right sides, are out. All the flanges are prepped, ground down, and covered with a weld-through primer for the installation of the new pans. So the next video we're going to do is going to be on a patch panel that we make for the frame rail on this car, and I'll show you how to fabricate and install a piece that's not available. And then after that I'll have a video segment on the installation of the pans that we put in here, and that'll wrap up the trunk replacement segment on this car. And if you haven't, please subscribe to the channel, and once you subscribe, hit that notification bell so you can get alerted to when these new videos come out. And also leave me some comments if there's something that I might have missed, or questions that you have about certain things that I did or tools that I used. And also go ahead and like the video. If you didn't like it, well, you can do that too. But I'd appreciate all the attention that you can give to these, because it's important to my status with YouTube, that I gain subscribers, I gain viewing time is important also, and the more things that they see happening as far as comments and likes and whatnot, it allows me to do more with YouTube and to be able to keep bringing you informational videos and watch the progress on all the projects going on here in the shop. So again, I appreciate everyone that's been watching, and tell your friends, share the videos, ask them to do the same thing, subscribe, and go ahead and like the videos. And that's what we're going to wrap up this video at. And right now I'm going to go take care of somebody else who's come to visit me here in the shop. Ashton, what are you doing there, bub? Okay, you fixing your car?
Yes.
Alright, good job. He's got to take over someday. Thanks again. We'll see you soon.